use the DF Player Mini MP3 Player module with the Arduino Nano. Hopefully you've got yours wired up something similar here. I went ahead and added 3 buttons that I'll use for play and pause, and then for next and previous to be able to cycle through different MP3 files that are loaded on my micro SD. Just wanted to walk you through a little bit of the process here. You've got photos of the wiring diagram and layout so you can see how to hook this up. It's really pretty straightforward. I apologize, my wires in my example aren't color coded. I didn't have enough jumper wires to color code everything properly, but hopefully you can follow along. So once you get all your electronics connected and all the wires ran properly, you're going to want to go first into your SD card. So I'll just open my micro SD card here. So the first step, your SD card, mine is named GP1. Your SD card needs to have a folder in it that's named MP3. It's really important you have that folder named MP3. And then inside of that folder, you can put your MP3 files. So what I did on my computer, I just made a folder on my desktop called MP3s. And I went to YouTube and just downloaded, like, I found an AC/DC song, Guns N' Roses song, the Harlem Globetrotters theme song, and I used a free online YouTube to MP3 converter. If you just Google free online YouTube to MP3 converter, you'll find that. You can paste the URL for the YouTube song or YouTube video in, and it'll convert it to MP3 and make it downloadable. Just be really careful doing that. A lot of those sites are, introduce malware or viruses to your computer, so just be cautious if you choose to do that. Your computer also probably has lots of MP3s, and you can do like voice recordings. There's lots of ways to get these. What's important is that in order for your MP3 player to work, for your DFMini MP3 decoder to work with your Arduino, you have to have a folder on your SD card. Here's my SD card, a folder named MP3, and then you have to name each file. They have to start with 4 numbers, and they need to be sequential. So like it has to start with 0001, and then the next one 0002, and so on. And then if you want to add anything else, this is actually back in black. If I wanted to say AC/DC underscore back in black, you can do that. But in order for the decoder to work, it needs to start with 0001 and then 0002 and so forth. And then you cannot have any spaces in the name. So I'm just going to leave mine as 0001 or AC/DC. And you can see I've got my 4 songs in my folder now. Okay, so that's your first step. I'm going to then eject that card or remove that card safely from my computer. So I'll do that. I'm going to then install the card into my DF player. So now we're ready to code. So we're going to go to Arduino. I'm just going to open up the sample code that I wrote for you. When you get into the sample code, you'll remember everything above the void setup. So in this case, above line 20, this is all of our initializers. We've got to include our libraries. This library, the DF Robot DFMini Player or DF Player Mini, may not be installed on your computer already. So if it's not, you'll want to go to Sketch, Include Library, Manage Libraries, and then just search in here in the pop-up. You're going to search for, eventually, there we go. You're going to search for DF Robot DF Player, and that should get you, yep, there you go, DF Robot, DF Player Mini. It looks exactly the same. It'll default to installing the newest version and just click install it and it'll be installed. That's all you have to do, and it'll let you use it here. Make sure that you use whatever pins that you've connected to your DF module. I used pin 2 and 3, so if you use the same setup that I had in the wiring diagram, you'll be good there. Make sure you use those, and then similarly, any buttons, there's lots of things you can do with interactivity with the DF module. So you could add lots of different sensors and buttons, but make sure that you just pay attention to where you're connecting those buttons. So my buttons are wired to digital pin 8, 9, and 10 on the Arduino. So make sure that whatever those are, you want to change those here. So you're setting here, like I'm I'm naming a variable next and telling the Arduino that I've connected a button there, or that I'm going to communicate through pin 8. I'll later tell it that it's a button. Then in void setup, You can see all of the code in void setup. This is pretty straightforward, so I won't walk you through this. I will just note, excuse me, will note that this is pretty important, that the player volume can be anywhere from 0 to 30. For me, it seems like 20 is a nice amount where I can hear the sound nicely. It's a good tone, but it's not raspy. It's not like overdoing it on the speakers, but you can feel free to play with that. Make sure you tell the Arduino what's happening. So you got to set the pin mode and then go ahead and initialize like set the initial state. So we're going to set all of these to high, so that whenever we press the button, we'll see a disruption in that state, and it'll switch from low to high every time we press the button, and that'll give us a sense of what's going on. That's how we're going to use it to control the MP3 player. Once then so that I can get everything set properly, I've got player.play1. That player is reading from here. When I created this, how we're going to communicate with the DF player, I named the DF player as once I said player.begin, I've got to use that term player anywhere else that I want to reference communicating with the DF player. I could switch that to anything I want. I've just got to be consistent after it is here. So when I go down to line 37, I just wanted to initialize the player and get it started. So I told it to player.play. This is referencing the play function out of the DF robot library. So I player.play track 1 is the nomenclature. That's what this means here, player.play track 1. And then it plays for 1/4 of a second, so barely gets started, and then I pause it. And the reason was that I did that, I just needed to be able to get it started. Behind the scenes, you'd never actually hear that happening, but it helps make the rest of the code a little bit easier so that we can interrupt it whenever we need to and don't have to let a song play all the way through before we can pause or do next or whatever. So then for my void loop, we use this activated language that was initialized up here when we defined activated to low. So we're going to say if digital read equals activated, another digital read play. So we're going to read the play button. If play is low, in other words, if it's been pressed, then it's going to be equal to activated, which is low. If digital read play is low, then we're going to read into here. We're going to say, okay, if is playing, so is it actually playing? Then we're going to tell the player to pause, and we're going to set is playing to false. In other words, we're just keeping track of the state of is it actually making sound or not. Else, so that it's not playing, so if nothing is being played right now, then we're going to set is playing to true, and we're going to start the player. So we're going to start playing music. So that's how we're going to control this whole section here, controls the play or pause. So I'll just add controls the play/pause button. Then here, we're going to we're going to define how the next button works. And in this definition, you can see this is really straightforward. We're just going to, again, digital read next. We're reading on the pin that we defined as next up here. So next is 8. So on digital read pin 8, if pin 8 is low, in other words, we pressed it, then it would be equal to activated, which holds a value of low. So if that button is activated, or if that button is pressed, then we're going to do one more if statement. If it's playing, the player should go to next. If not, it won't do anything. We didn't define an else option here. So if the music was playing, it's going to switch songs. Otherwise, can't switch songs in our MP3 player. Obviously, you could change that. Similarly, we're going to define here how the previous button works. And you'll notice exactly the same, except we're going to read on the pin for previous, where the previous button is, and then we're going to tell it to go to the previous song instead of the next song. So once all that's done, we're going to upload the code. So we'll do that now. And now it has uploaded. I'm going to unplug the USB. That should power everything off because I don't have a power source connected. And then I'm going to plug up my 9-volt battery. This should start the program on the Arduino. You notice the DFMini player blinked a couple of times. That's just letting me know that was that 1/4 of a second where it started just a little bit and then turned off before we actually heard anything. And then now we're going to turn this on and hopefully we can hear some music. And then we'll test our different buttons. There was our next button, and here comes previous. We'll do next one more time. And one more time. And that Harlem Globetrotter song is really faint at the beginning, so I'm going to previous back to Guns N' Roses. And then we'll test our pause capability. So we're going to press it one more time, and that should play for us. And that's exactly what we wanted. It started right where we left off. So it didn't restart the track, it just paused and restarted.